Ajwail, when I finish, turn this mic off, okay? When I finish. No, but when I finish, turn it off. Just so I could. زيارة وارث. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك يا وارث آدم صفوة الله. السلام عليك يا وارث نوح نبي الله. السلام عليك يا وارث إبراهيم خليل الله. السلام عليك يا وارث موسى كليم الله. السلام عليك يا وارث عيسى روح الله. السلام عليك يا وارث محمد حبيب الله. السلام عليك يا وارث أمير المؤمنين ولي الله. السلام عليك يا ابن محمد المصطفى. السلام عليك يا ابن علي المرتضى. السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء. السلام عليك يا ابن خديجة الكبرى. السلام عليك يا ثار الله وابن ثاره والوتر الموتور. أشهد أنك قد أقمت الصلاة وآتيت الزكاة وأمرت بالمعروف ونهيت عن المنكر وأطعت الله ورسوله حتى أتاك اليقين. فلعن الله أمة قتلتك، ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك، ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، أشهد أنك كنت نورا في الأصلاب الشامخة والأرحام المطهرة، لم تنجسك الجاهلية بأنجاسها ولم تلبسك من مدلهمات ثيابها. وأشهد أنك من دعائم الدين وأركان المؤمنين. وأشهد أنك الإمام البر التقي الرضي الزكي الهادي المهدي. وأشهد أن الأئمة من ولدك كلمة التقوى وأعلام الهدى والعروة الوثقى والحجة على أهل الدنيا. وأشهد الله وملائكته وأنبياءه ورسله أني بكم مؤمن وبي بكم موقن بشرائع ديني وخواتيم عملي، وقلبي لقلبكم سلم وأمري لأمركم متبع. صلوات الله عليكم وعلى أرواحكم وعلى أجسادكم وعلى أجسامكم وعلى شاهدكم وعلى غائبكم وعلى ظاهركم وعلى باطنكم بأبي أنت وأمي يا ابن رسول الله. بأبي أنت وأمي يا أبا عبد الله. لقد عظمت الرزية وجلت المصيبة بك علينا وعلى جميع أهل السماوات والأرض. فلعن الله أمة أسرجت وألجمت وتهيأت وتنقبت لقتالك. يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، قصدت زيارتك قصدت زيارتك أسأل الله بالشأن الذي لك عنده وبالمحل الذي لك لديه أن يصلي على محمد وآل محمد، واجعلني معكم في الدنيا والآخرة. صلوات.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. Respected brothers and sisters, our dear online viewers, Samahat al-Sheikh Azhar Nasser, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. عظم الله لكم الأجر بمصاب أبي عبد الله الحسين. We send our condolences to the Shia of Amir al-Mu'mineen and to the Imam of our time, Imam Mahdi Ajal Allah Ta'ala Farajahu al-Sharif, on the shahadat of Abu Abdullah al-Husayn, the master of the martyrs. Tonight we renew our vows to commemorate the tragedy of Karbala as the followers of the Ahlul Bayt. We thank you all for joining us tonight, whether you are in person or joining us in the comfort of your home. My name is Sayyid Mahdi Diyauddin, and on behalf of the Muslim Youth in Motion, I would like to welcome you all to the second night of our 11-night Muharram series with guest speaker Samahat al-Sheikh Azhar Nasser. This program is brought to you by the Muslim Youth in Motion. The MYM is a grassroots volunteer-led organization based out of Vancouver, British Columbia. And we recognize first and foremost that the land on which we join our audience on, and in the coming nights, for tonight and the coming nights, is the shared traditional territory of the Katsi, Simiamu, and other Coast Salish peoples. We want to honor this land's original peoples, and we invite others to also think about the past and present realities of these communities, inshaAllah. So with the tawfiq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the guidance of the Holy Prophet and his household, the MYM is offering a virtual commemoration of the tragedy of Karbala, and we hope that everyone in attendance could follow the guidelines put in place for our nightly programs. We ask that everyone, regardless of their social bubble, sits 6 feet apart from each other, and we also ask you to keep your mask on at all times. Salats also will not be held at the center, just to abide with the COVID protocols set in place. And if you'd like to exit, the sisters' exit is to my right, and you'll see arrows taking you all the way to the exit. And inshallah, the brothers' exit also is to my left, and inshallah, you'll find the door with the arrows posted. We ask you to limit your washroom usage if possible, and try to keep it only to emergency and rare occurrences. Yeah, Sheikh Azhar, I will introduce without further ado Sheikh Samahat al-Sheikh Azhar Nasser. Samahat al-Sheikh was born and raised in Michigan and has a degree in cultural anthropology from the University of Michigan. After completing his academic studies, he pursued his religious studies at the Hawza of Najaf under the office of Grand Ayatollah Sistani and Grand Ayatollah Hakim. Samahat al-Sheikh is no stranger to our community, and he is an amazing person to have, and inshallah we are truly honored and pleasured to have him speak for us for the coming nights. And without further ado, we're going to be beginning with the second lecture of his series based on the hadith of Unwan al-Basri. So last night he did introduce the hadith of Unwan al-Basri, and today he will continue with his second lecture in the series with the title of tonight's topic being Eliciting Divine Grace. And without further ado, please welcome Samahat al-Sheikh Azhar Nasser with 3 loud salawat. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allah.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. ثانية على حب الحسن والحسين، على حب رسول الله. الثالثة بأعلى أعلى أصواتكم.
صل على محمد وآل محمد.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على خاتم الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. صلى على محمد. صلى الله عليه وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين. صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله، صلى الله عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله. غريب يا مظلوم كربلاء، ما خاب من تمسك بكم وأمن من لجأ إليكم. يا ليتنا فيا ليتنا كنا معكم سيدي، فنفوز والله فوزا عظيما. قال تعالى في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وما توفيقي إلا بالله، عليه توكلت وإليه أنيب. صدق الله العلي العظيم. عطروا أفواهكم وزينوا مجالسكم بذكر الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. Respected elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Last night we introduced the hadith of Unwan al-Basri, and we mentioned that this individual was a 94-year-old man who had spent a number of years attending the classes of Malik ibn Anas in Medina. And Malik ibn Anas is the famous scholar who is known as the founder of the Maliki school of jurisprudence. Unwan al-Basri, it seems that he heard about the vast knowledge of Imam al-Sadiq from Malik, and when Imam al-Sadiq returned to Medina after being away from Medina for whatever reason, we don't know where the Imam was. Upon returning to Medina, Unwan al-Basri, this elderly man, decides to go and visit Imam al-Sadiq and to seek permission from him so he can be admitted as a private student of Imam al-Sadiq. So he approaches the Imam and he asks him if he can gain knowledge from the Imam just as he had acquired knowledge from Malik. What does the Imam say to him? So we continue the narration. What does Imam al-Sadiq say to Unwan al-Basri? The answer The reaction of Imam al-Sadiq is interesting. قال إني رجل مطلوب ومع ذلك لي أوراد في كل ساعة من آناء الليل والنهار فلا تشغلني عن وردي وخذ عن مالك. عجيب. Imam al-Sadiq, he says to Unwan, Inni rajulun matloob. The Imam alayhi salam, he says to him, there are a lot of people who demand my attention. So there's a discussion among scholars regarding what the Imam meant when he said, Ana rajulun matloob. Some scholars have said the Imam was saying to him that a lot of people demand my time. A lot of people demand my attention. After all, Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam has thousands of students, and he has a core of elite students that he spends a lot of time with. And then the Imam alayhi salam, he says, another opinion that scholars have given is that when the Imam says, Inni rajulun matloob, what the Imam means is that I am wanted by the government. That it's not safe for you to come to my home. It's not safe for you to be known as a private student. And then the Imam alayhi salam, so basically the Imam is essentially telling him that, listen, I'm too busy. وَمَعَ ذَلِكَ لِي أَوْرَادٌ فِي كُلِّ سَاعَةٍ مِنْ آنَاءِ اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ. The Imam says, I have a lot of awrad. Awrad is the plural of wird. Wird is basically a recommended type of worship. It could be certain adhkar, certain ad'iyas the Imam would recite. So the Imam says, I have special acts of worship that I perform throughout the day and throughout the night. فَلَا تَشْغَلْنِ عَنْ وِرْدِي. So do not distract me from my spiritual regiment. And then the Imam says to him, وَخُذْ عَنْ مَالِكَ. Imam al-Sadiq says to Unwan, go back to Malik. وَاخْتَلِفْ إِلَيْهِ كَمَا كُنْتُ تَخْتَلِفْ إِلَيْهِ. Go back to your old teacher. This hadith is interesting because you would imagine that the Imam alayhi salam would embrace such a person. Usually when someone comes to Ahlul Bayt wanting knowledge, the Imams don't turn people away. So why is it here that Imam al-Sadiq basically tells him, listen, I'm too busy. Inni rajulun matloob. A lot of people demand my attention. I have my own routine of worship. Go back to Malik. Why would the Imam do this? It seems, brothers and sisters, that the Imam may have done this for two reasons. Number one, the Imam alayhi salam wants to test the hunger of this person. You know, there are many people that claim to want knowledge. There are many people that say, I want to learn. But in reality, they lack determination. They lack discipline. And usually it's talk. So the Imam alayhi salam is essentially testing him that you say you want to take knowledge from Ahlul Bayt, prove it. If you really have a thirst for ilm, I want you to demonstrate that thirst. It reminds me of a Chinese proverb where it says, if someone says that they are thirsty, give them a half a cup of water. Because if they're really thirsty, they'll ask you for the other half. So the idea here is that the Imam wants to say that, listen, I cannot waste time with people who just say that they are seekers of knowledge. You have to show me that you are a serious student of knowledge. This is one possible explanation. The second is Unwan al-Basri, when he comes to Imam al-Sadiq, he says to him that I spent years studying with Malik, and I want to take knowledge from you in the same way that I took knowledge from Malik. So Unwan, what is he implying here? This statement implies what? It implies that Malik ibn Anas is an alim, and Ja'far al-Sadiq is also an alim. He's also a scholar. That he seems to have this attitude that I can benefit from you in the same way that I benefited from Malik. Can we compare Ahlul Bayt to an ordinary Islamic scholar, or even to a prolific Islamic scholar? Malik ibn Anas is a scholar, but is he fallible? He's fallible. Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam is not just a scholar. Imam al-Sadiq is an imam. He's ma'soom. The knowledge that you take from Malik is coming from a fallible source. The knowledge that comes from Ja'far al-Sadiq, is it a fallible source or is it an infallible source? It's an infallible source. Because Imam al-Sadiq is al-thiql al-asghar. The Prophet said, "Inni tarikun fikum al-thaqalain." I'm leaving behind two weighty things, two infallible sources of guidance. Kitab Allah wa itrati ahl bayti. Can't compare the two. If you want to learn Islam, if you want to learn the Quran, you have to take knowledge from those who are authorized to teach the Quran. And this is why when you look at the wasiyah of Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen to Kumail, you know what Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib says to Kumail? He says, "Ya Kumail, la ta'khudh illa anna, takun minna." O Kumail, do not take religious knowledge except from us, Ahlul Bayt. If you do so, you will be from us. When two individuals came to Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, wanting knowledge from him, and they had gone to other scholars from other schools. Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, he says to these two men, "Sharriqa aw gharriba fa innakuma lan tajida ilman sahihan illa shay'an yakhruju min indina." Imam al-Sadiq says, go to the east, go to the west, you will not find true knowledge, except what comes from us. Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, what does he say to Kumail? If we go back to the wasiyah, "Ya Kumail, ma min ilmin." What a statement this is. Only Ali ibn Abi Talib can make a claim like this. "Ya Kumail, ma min ilmin illa wa ana aftahu." There is no knowledge except that I open it. So Imam al-Sadiq, when he says, go back to Malik, he's trying to teach him a lesson. Number one, you need to demonstrate that you truly are thirsty for knowledge from Ahlul Bayt, that you're not just talk. Secondly, don't ever compare anyone with Al Muhammad. Don't compare. They cannot be compared to anyone. So the Imam alayhi salam, you can imagine Unwan is very eager, very anxious, and Imam al-Sadiq says, go back to Malik. Rejected. I don't accept you as my student. What does Unwan say? What is his reaction? He says, فَاغْتَمَمْتُ مِنْ ذَلِكَ. Unwan said, I felt an overwhelming sadness. فَاغْتَمَمْتُ مِنْ ذَلِكَ وَخَرَجْتُ مِنْ عِنْدِهِ. Unwan says, I left. The Imam turned me away. I felt sad. I felt depressed. وَقُلْتُ فِي نَفْسِي. Look at what he says. And I said to myself, look at how humble this man was. This is perhaps why eventually he gets the tawfiq to actually go and take knowledge from Imam al-Sadiq. وَقُلْتُ فِي نَفْسِي لو تفرس في خيرا لما زجرني عن الاختلاف إليه والأخذ عنه. Unwan, just from this line, you can tell that he's a humble person. He says, I said to myself, if Imam al-Sadiq saw any good in me, he would have never rejected me. So here, Unwan doesn't say, what is this Ja'far al-Sadiq? Why is he so arrogant? Why did he turn me away? He turns the blame against himself. He says, maybe the Imam didn't see anything good in me. See, it's important to be humble. We always think that the problem is with the other person. Unwan says, if Imam al-Sadiq saw some potential in me, he wouldn't have turned me away. So what does he do? Again, this is another sign of the goodness of this man. فَدَخَلْتُ مَسْجِدَ الرَّسُولِ. He was rejected by Imam al-Sadiq. He goes to the masjid of the Prophet. I went to the mosque of the Prophet. He says, وَسَلَّمْتُ عَلَيْهِ. And I sent my salam to him. Right, this was before the Wahhabis were there. You were allowed to go and freely send your salam to the Prophet. Unwan, he goes and he greets the Prophet. ثُمَّ رَجَعْتُ مِنَ الْغَدِ إِلَى الرَّوْضَةِ. He says, the next day, I went to the masjid of the Prophet and I prayed a 2 rak'ah prayer between in al-Rawdah, Rawdatul Jannah, which is between the minbar of the Prophet and his grave. This is called Rawdatul Jannah. وَصَلَّيْتُ فِيهَا رَكْعَتَيْن. He says, I went and I prayed 2 rak'ah. And then what does he do? He makes a dua. See, he doesn't give up. Imam al-Sadiq turned him away. He says, okay, now I'm going to turn to Allah to see if Allah can resolve this issue for me. وَقُلْتُ, he narrates, Unwan says, I said, I made a dua, أَسْأَلُكَ يَا Allah. Oh Allah, I ask you, أَن تَعْطِفَ عَلَيَّ قَلْبَ جَعْفَرٍ. Unwan, he says, I asked Allah, Ya Allah, turn the heart of Ja'far al-Sadiq toward me. You know how we refer to Allah as Ya Muqallib al-Qulub. It's a very pious man. He doesn't just give up and go back to Malik. He asks Allah, Ya Allah, you are the one who turns hearts. You are Muqallib al-Qulub. أعطف علي قلب جعفر. Turn his heart to me. Why? What does Unwan want? وترزقني. And I ask you, Allah, وترزقني من علمه. And give me from his knowledge. O Unwan, why do you want knowledge from Imam al-Sadiq? What is your intention? وترزقني من علمه ما أهتدي به إلى صراطك المستقيم. Give me from his knowledge so it can guide me to your straight path. This should be the intention of gaining knowledge. Don't gain knowledge because you want to be called an allama or an alim or a maulana or you want to show off. This is This is what the purpose, the objective of knowledge is what? Guidance. I want to be guided. So he makes this dua. وَرَجَعْتُ إِلَى دَارِي مُغْتَمًّا. He says, I made this dua with a heavy heart. And I went back home. I went to my home. وَلَمْ أَخْتَلِفْ إِلَى مَالِكِ بْنِ أَنَسٍ. He says, I stopped going to the classes of Malik. I stopped attending. Why? لِمَا أُشْرِبَ قَلْبِي مِنْ حُبِّ جَعْفَرٍ. I stopped going to the classes of Malik ibn Anas. Why? Because my heart was filled with the love of Ja'far al-Sadiq. I couldn't go anymore. I became obsessed with this man. Then what does he say? فَمَا خَرَجْتُ مِنْ دَارِي إِلَّا إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ الْمَكْتُوبَةِ. Unwan al-Basri, what does he say? He says, I stayed at home. I never left my house except to perform the daily prayers. He went into a type of depression. He was grieving. He felt so saddened by the fact that Imam al-Sadiq had turned him away. حَتَّى عِيلَ صَبْرِي. You know, patience has its limits, yes? Unwan, he says, I stayed at home until I lost my patience. I couldn't take it anymore. فَلَمَّا ضَاقَ صَدْرِي. You could tell how hard he took it when Imam al-Sadiq turned him away. He said, I felt a tightness in my chest. And what did he do? He said, I couldn't take it anymore. فَلَمَّا ضَاقَ صَدْرِي تَنَعَّلْتُ وَتَرَدَّيْتُ. He says, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to go to Imam al-Sadiq. I put on my sandals. I put on my cloak. وَقَصَدْتُ جَعْفَرًا. So Imam al-Sadiq turned him away the first time. What is he doing now? He's putting on his clothes and he's going back to the house of Imam al-Sadiq. So what happens then? He says, فَلَمَّا حَضَرْتُ بَابَ دَارِ اسْتَأْذَنْتُ عَلَيْهِ فَخَرَجَ خَادِمُ اللَّهِ. He says, I went to the door. Can you imagine how lucky these people are? That he's standing at the door to the house of Ja'far al-Sadiq. May Allah Azza wa Jal allow us to witness the day when we can stand at the door of Imam Sahib al-Zaman. He says, I stood at the door and I sought permission to enter. A khadim, one of the Imam's servants, came out. فَقَالَ مَا حَاجَتُكَ. How can I help you? What do you need? What does Unwan say? فَقَالَ السَّلَامُ عَلَى الشَّرِيفِ. I have come to send my salam to the honorable one. This is why many ulama believe that Unwan al-Basri was not Shia. Because it's unusual for a muwali to address the Imam as Ash-Sharif. So it seems many scholars believe that he was not a follower of Ahlul Bayt. He refers to Imam al-Sadiq as Ash-Sharif, the noble man, the honorable man. So he says to the servant, I'm here to say salam to the noble man, meaning the Imam. What does the khadim say? What does the servant say? فَقَالَ هُوَ قَائِمٌ فِي مُصَلَّاهِ. The servant said that he's praying now. He's in his mihrab. He's praying. فَجَلَسْتُ بِحِذَاءِ بَابِ. Unwan doesn't leave. He says, I sat outside of his door. I sat outside of the door. فَمَا لَبِثْتُ إِلَّا يَسِيرًا إِذْ خَرَجَ خَادِمٌ. He says, I sat there for a few minutes, And a servant came to me and said, Udkhul ala barakatillah. Enter with the blessings of Allah. He was granted permission to enter. He says, فَدَخَلْتُ وَسَلَّمْتُ عَلَيْهِ. Unwan says, I went inside of the house. Imam al-Sadiq was sitting on his prayer mat. I said salam to him, and he replied the salam. وَقَال. Imam al-Sadiq, what does he say to him? اجلس غفر الله لك. Sit down. May Allah grant you His maghfirah. Believe me, if this dua is all that you get from Imam al-Sadiq, you're successful. فَجَلَسْت. Unwan, he sits besides Imam al-Sadiq. فَأَطْرَقَ مَلِيًّا. You see from this hadith, Unwan is very observant. He mentions minute details. He says, I sat and the Imam had his head down and he sat there quietly for a few moments. فَأَطْرَقَ مَلِيًّا ثُمَّ رَفَعَ رَأْسَهُ. Imam al-Sadiq then raised his head. وَقَالَ أَبُو مَنْ. The Imam is asking him about his name, but he doesn't say, what's your name? He says, Abu Man, meaning, what is your kunya? Your kunya. You see, Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, even the way that they address people, they do it with the utmost respect. Abu Man, what is your kunya? قال Abu Abdullah. His name is Unwan al-Basri. His kunya is what? Abu Abdullah, which is the same kunya as Imam al-Sadiq. What does the Imam say to him? قال ثبت الله كنيتك. Imam al-Sadiq says, may Allah affirm your kunya. May Allah affirm your kunya. Meaning, your kunya literally means father of the servant of God. May Allah make you a father of a servant of God. Meaning, may Allah make you an abd, a servant of God, and a father of a servant of God. And then the Imam says what? ثبت الله كنيتك ووفقك يا أبا عبد الله. The Imam, what does he say to him? May Allah give you tawfiq. May Allah give you tawfiq. Unwan says, فَقُلْتُ فِي نَفْسِي. Unwan says, I said to myself, لو لم يكن لي من زيارته والتسليم غير هذا الدعاء لكان كثيرا. Unwan, he said, I said to myself that if I gained nothing from visiting Imam al-Sadiq and greeting him except this dua where he said, ثَبَّتَ اللَّهُ كُنْيَتَكَ وَوَفَّقَكَ. He said it would be abundant. It would be enough. The Imam says, may Allah increase your tawfiq. And this is the topic for our discussion. Tawfiq. The Imam says, may Allah give you tawfiq. What is the meaning of the word tawfiq? I have not seen a word in the English language that reflects the nuanced meaning of the word tawfiq. Tawfiq comes from the word wafaqa, wifaq. And its literal meaning is to bring things together, to align something, to bring it together. And this is why in the Quran, when Allah speaks about a husband and a wife, a married couple who's having problems, marital conflict, وَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ شِقَاقَ بَيْنِهِمَا فَابْعَثُوا حَكَمًا مِنْ أَهْلِهِ وَحَكَمًا مِنْ أَهْلِهَا. If the couple is not able to reconcile their differences amongst themselves, then let the husband appoint an arbiter and let the wife appoint an arbiter. If you can't solve the problem, seek outside help. And then what does Allah say? إِن يُرِيدَ إِصْلَاحًا يُوَفِّقِ اللَّهُ بَيْنَهُمَا. Allah says, if they both desire reconciliation, Allah will bring them together. So you see, يُوَفِّقِ اللَّهُ بَيْنَهُمَا means that Allah will bring their hearts together. So the word tawfiq literally means to bring things together, to have things align themselves. Now, what is the religious meaning of the word tawfiq? Now, in Islamic terms, when we say, may Allah give you tawfiq, Allah yuwaffiqak, what does that mean? What it means is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala paves the way for you. He brings a number of factors that are necessary for your spiritual success. He brings it all together. Because tawfiq requires the combination of our effort and Allah's grace. We need it from Allah. Having an intention to do something doesn't guarantee that it's going to happen. I'll give you a very simple example. When you have, if you want to think, if you think of Salatul Jama'ah, you know, there are some people, they have the tawfiq to perform Salatul Jama'ah. They always pray in congregation. Having the intention to pray Salatul Jama'ah and even making the effort to do so doesn't guarantee that it will happen. For example, maybe one day I make the intention that tomorrow I'm going to pray Salatul Jama'ah at the local masjid. Of course, this is pre-COVID. Everything that I say is pre-COVID. You make the intention that you want to pray Jama'ah at the masjid. And you make the effort. You put it in your calendar, you get in your car, you have a flat tire. Or you get stuck in traffic, you don't make it. You did everything that you could, but you didn't get the tawfiq. It's not just about your effort. On Allah's side, He has to give you tawfiq. Some of us, we don't have the tawfiq of praying Salatul Layl. Forget about Salatul. Some of us don't have the tawfiq to pray Salatul Fajr. But Salatul Layl, you know, we have ahadith that say a person is deprived of Salatul Layl because of the sins they committed during the day. Tawfiq. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala facilitates it. And you have someone else who wants to pray Salatul Jama'ah, they have the niyyah, they put in the effort, and it's easy for them. Allah facilitates it for them. Salatul Ghufayla. Many of you are familiar with Salatul Ghufayla. It's the recommended prayer to perform between Maghrib and Isha. A lot of people don't get the tawfiq to perform Salatul Ghufayla. In fact, there's an interesting narration where Sayyidina Zainab and Imam al-Sajjad, they're standing in front of Yazid. La'anahullah. Yazid seems that he mockingly asks Sayyidina Zainab, do you think Allah would ever forgive me for what I did to your family in Karbala? Sayyidina Zainab says no. Imam al-Sajjad, he says, and both of the answers are correct. Sayyidina Zainab says, no, Allah will not forgive you. Imam al-Sajjad, he says, if you commit yourself to praying Salat al-Ghufayla every day for the rest of your life, Allah will forgive you. Is there a contradiction here? Sayyidina Zainab gave him the right answer, and Imam al-Sajjad gave him the right answer. Sayyidina Zainab, when she said no, She said no, because she knows Allah would not give someone like Yazid the tawfiq to pray Salatul Ghufayla. If you sin during the day, even if you want to pray Salatul Layl, it will be very difficult for you. You'll start getting tired, or you'll forget. Obstacles will be put in front of you. The verse that I began with was from Surah Hud, verse 88. And this is an ayah, at least part of the ayah. People hang it up in their homes. People, they make calligraphy out of it. And this is a statement of Shu'aib. What does he say? وَمَا تَوْفِيقِ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ. My tawfiq, meaning the ingredients for me to be spiritually successful are in God's hands. It's not just about my effort. I might put in the utmost effort and it doesn't happen. Just like with the example of Salatul Jama'ah. You might have the intention of going, you get in your car, you try to do it, but you get a flat tire, you get stuck in traffic. Maybe the Imam is not in town that week, something goes wrong. The road is not paved for you. وَمَا تَوْفِيقِ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ. This is what Shu'aib says. What is the meaning of tawfiq? There's a beautiful statement of Khawaja Nasir ad-Din al-Tusi, who is the teacher of Allam al-Hilli. He says tawfiq is divine grace. It's lutf. Lutfullah. It's a divine grace. What do we mean by divine grace? He says, ما يقرب إلى الطاعة ويبعد عن المعصية. Tawfiq is when Allah paves the road for you that brings you closer to His obedience. He makes doing good things easier for you. And He keeps you away from the things that bring about His displeasure. In the dictionary Majma'ul Bahrain, and this is an important dictionary because it has all of the terms mentioned in the Quran and in the Ahadith. It's a very important resource. If you look under tawfiq, it says, وَالتَّوْفِيقْ مِنَ اللَّهِ تَوْجِيهُ الْأَسْبَابِ نَحْوَ الْمَطْلُوبِ الْخَيْرِ. توجيه الأسباب. It's Allah facilitating things for you to do good. We need this tawfiq. Now, what are some of the things that can give us tawfiq? It's not enough to just rely on your own intelligence and your own efforts and your own hard work. You need tawfiq. You know, there are many people who went to the Hawza of Qom. But how many of them had the tawfiq to write Tafsir al-Mizan? Tens of thousands of people go to seminaries, but you have a few of them whom Allah gives tawfiq to. There are certain people that have the tawfiq to build hospitals. They have the tawfiq to do things that are pleasing to Allah. What is the secret? How can we elicit this divine grace? There are many things that are mentioned in the ahadith. I'll share with you a few of them. One of the things that is mentioned is charity. You know, brothers and sisters, charity is one of the most emphasized virtues in the Quran. Allah, when He describes the believers, usually Allah describes them as what? الَّذِينَ يُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ وَيُؤْتُونَ الزَّكَاةَ. If you go to Surah Al-Layl, Surah 92, Allah mentions how giving charity and having taqwa gives a person tawfiq. فَأَمَّا مَنْ أَعْطَى وَاتَّقَى. As for the one who gives, but it's not enough to give, because many people give and they're generous and they donate, but Allah doesn't give them tawfiq. There are many celebrities, they give millions in charity. Doesn't have any barakah. Ahlul Bayt, they give a few loaves of bread, fi sabilillah. Allah reveals Surah Al-Dahr. فَأَمَّا مَنْ أَعْطَى وَاتَّقَى. As for the one who gives and is God conscious, وَصَدَّقَ بِالْحُسْنَى. As for the one who gives and is God conscious and believes in the promise of reward in the hereafter, وَصَدَّقَ بِالْحُسْنَى فَسَنُيَسِّرُهُ لِلْيُسْرَى. Allah says we will pave the way for him. We will pave the way of ease for him. Tawfiq. Allah will give you tawfiq. And if you want to be deprived of tawfiq, the ayah says, verses 8 to 10, وَأَمَّا مَنْ بَخِلَ وَاسْتَغْنَى. As for the one who is stingy and feels that they are independent, وَكَذَّبَ بِالْحُسْنَى, and who doesn't believe in the reward of the hereafter, فَسَنُيَسِّرُهُ لِلْعُسْرَى. We will put obstacles. We will ease them towards difficulty. Charity is one of the ways that we can elicit divine grace, tawfiq. And I'll just give you one example. Musa, when he fled Egypt and he arrived in Midian, what does he do when he arrives? You know, it's not easy. If you put yourself in Musa's shoes, he's a fugitive. He's on the run. No food. He only has the clothes on his back. He arrives in a foreign land. He doesn't know anybody. And he sees a bunch of shepherds pushing and shoving, trying to draw a bucket so they can water their sheep. And then he sees two young ladies standing away from the crowd. And he decides to do what? He decides to offer charity in the form of help. فَسَقَى لَهُمَا ثُمَّ تَوَلَّى إِلَى الظِّلِّ. What did he do? He offered them a very simple charity. He helped them water their sheep. What happened to Musa? Allah gives him the tawfiq of meeting Shu'aib. You know, if it wasn't for this incident, how did Musa meet Shu'aib and end up marrying his daughter and spending 10 years in solitude with a prophet? Imagine how wonderful those years were for Musa's spiritual development. All of it can be traced back to that simple act of charity. Tawfiq. Don't underestimate the virtue of charity. Maybe what you have today, the good paying job that you have today, maybe it was given to you because of charity that you gave 5 years ago. We don't know. But we do know that Allah says, فَأَمَّا مَنْ أَعْطَى وَاتَّقَى وَصَدَّقَ بِالْحُسْنَى فَسَنُيَسِّرُهُ لِلْيُسْرَى. Charity. Number 2, having sincere intentions. We have to train ourselves, brothers and sisters, that before we act, sometimes we emphasize so much on the deed, prayer, charity, hajj, ziyarah, whatever it may be, that we forget to analyze and investigate the motives that we have. Before you do anything, ask yourself, what is my intention? Are my intentions pure? Or am I doing it because I want to be recognized? Am I doing it for accolades? Am I doing it for prestige? Why are you doing what you're doing? If we go back to the ayah that I began with, Surah 11, verse 88, Shu'aib is advising his people. And they're wondering, many of these communities, when prophets would be sent to them, they would wonder, do you want money from us? Why are you preaching? Do you have an ulterior motive? They would say, in ajriya illa ala Allah. That we don't want anything from you. Our reward is with Allah. We don't want any compensation from you. Shu'aib, what does he say? إن أريد إلا الإصلاح ما استطعت. I am advising you, I am preaching, and the only thing that I want is to reform the community. I have no ulterior motive. I don't have ill intentions. My intention is islah. I just want what is good for you. I want to rectify, I want to reform the problems in our society. And then what does he say? وَمَا تَوْفِيقِ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ. One of the things that brings about tawfiq is to express your dependence on Allah. Don't say, I know that I have to depend on Allah. Shu'aib here is teaching us that say it. Get yourself into the habit of saying, وَمَا تَوْفِيقِ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ. I do my best, but I ask Allah for tawfiq. وَمَا تَوْفِيقِ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ. Don't say that I know this in my heart. Utter those words. They need to be heard. Bring them into the world. Express your dependency on Allah. This brings about tawfiq. This is a type of dua. Dua elicits divine grace. And the hadith are many. Lawful income. We'll speak about halal rizq. Do you expect Allah? Some people come to me. They have a lot of problems with their children. All of their children are on drugs. They're alcoholics. They're away from deen. The parents, they go to masjid. They go for ziyarah. They pray. They fast. Maybe that's not the problem. Maybe the problem is your rizq is not halal. And we think that halal is just the ingredients. You go to Whole Foods or you go to Save-On and you look at the ingredients. Oh, this has gelatin. Okay, we're not going to have this. But his whole income is from haram. You think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to give you tawfiq? You think Allah will bless you with righteous children? The food that you're putting in them is haram. And you're wondering why my kids are messed up, why I don't feel anything when I pray. It goes back to these fundamentals. Your rizq has to be halal. Having a pleasant temperament, having akhlaq. Some of us, we cry for Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, but we have the akhlaq of Umar bin Sa'ad. You have to behave like them. You have to have their adab. Having good friends. And I'll mention one final thing and we'll conclude. Being good to your parents. If I were to mention one thing that will give you tawfiq in your life, goodness to your parents. It's impossible to disrespect, to mistreat your parents and expect Allah to shower you with grace. It is impossible. And if Allah is giving you material wealth, you should be even more afraid, because that means you have nothing in the akhirah and all of your hasanat are being cashed now. Goodness to your parents. Whether they are dead or alive. If they're dead, pay sadaqah on their behalf. If your parents have died and you know that they have qada prayers, make them up for them. When you recite Quran, send the thawab to them or read it on their behalf. When you pray Salatul Layl, do it for them. One of my teachers in Najaf, Sheikh Baqir al-Irawani, who's the teacher of many scholars in Najaf, he says that every time I go into the haram of Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, I visit Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib on behalf of my mother and my father. This is a man who is graduating mujtahids under him. Goes back to these basics. Have you heard of Sayyid al-Mar'ashi al-Najafi, this great marji' who died in the early 90s? He authored many books. When he used to pray Salatul Jama'ah in the haram of Sayyidah Fatima Ma'suma, the haram would be filled. People would be fighting to pray behind him. He had students, books. He was an illustrious scholar. When he was a marji', as he reflected on his life, he says, I think that everything that Allah has given me, especially the spiritual gifts, is because of something I did when I was 12 or 13 years old. What did he do? He says, my father was an alim. He was a scholar when we were in Najaf, and he used to attend the classes of al-Akhund al-Khurasani. He's a famous scholar. And he used to take me with him. I was 12, 13 years old. My father would take me to the dars, to the class. Hawza. He says, one day, my father was taking a nap. And my mother came to me and she said that, go wake up your father because he's going to miss his class. So he says, I went into the room and I saw my father sleeping so peacefully. He says, I looked at him and I felt bad. I didn't want to disturb him. He was having such a pleasant nap. But he thinks to himself, but I have to wake him up. We have to go to class. So he was thinking, he stood there looking at his father, thinking about what is the best way to wake him up without startling him. Do you know what he does? He goes to the feet of his father and he starts gently rubbing his cheek on the feet of his father. His father feels a little bit of a tickle on his feet. He opens his eyes and he says, what are you doing, my son? He says, I wanted to wake you up, but I didn't want to startle you. Sayyid al-Mar'ashi, he says, when my father woke up from his nap on that day, he raised his hands in dua and asked Allah to give me tawfiq in my life. He says, everything that I have achieved is because of the dua of my father. This is the gateway to tawfiq. If your parents are alive, honor them. Keep in touch with them. Do not disrespect them. And if they are dead, don't forget them. Pray for them, recite Fatiha for them, recite Quran for them, do ziyarah on their behalf. And Allah Azza wa Jal will open the floodgates in your life. Tawfiq. We need tawfiq for everything. We need tawfiq for istighfar. You know, on the day of Ashura, we know that Hur made tawbah and he joined Imam al-Hussein. He had the tawfiq. There were tens of thousands who didn't join Imam al-Hussein. Why was Hur the one who received the tawfiq and he joined? When Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam was heading towards Iraq, because he had received thousands of letters from the people of Kufa calling him to lead a rebellion against the Umayyads. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, with his caravan, they move from Mecca. They travel through the deserts, through the mountains, through the valleys, until they reach the outskirts of Kufa. They traveled for 23 days and they stopped at 38 resting stations until they were getting close to Kufa. Yazid ibn Ziyad, he sends one of his most decorated military commanders to intercept Imam al-Hussein, to block him from entering Kufa. This decorated military commander who was leading a brigade of 1,000 soldiers was Hur ibn Yazid al-Riyahi. When Imam al-Hussein was approaching and he was getting close to Kufa, he saw this massive army. And when the women and the children saw this army, they became afraid. It scared them when they saw all of these soldiers armed to the teeth. Hur arrives, Imam al-Hussein, he says, "O Hur, you put fear in the hearts of the daughters of Rasulullah. ثَكَلَتْكَ أُمُّكَ. Shame on you. May your mother grieve over you for putting fear in the hearts of the daughters of Rasulullah. Hur, he says, Ya ibn Rasulullah, if anyone other than you were to say this to me, I would have killed him. But I would never say to you, ثَكَلَتْكَ أُمُّكَ, because I know your mother is Fatima. Hur, at the end of the day, he respected the Ahlul Bayt. When it was the time of Salah, Hur is the leader of his army, his brigade. Imam al-Hussein turns to him, he says, are you going to lead your men in prayer, or would you like to join us in Jama'ah? Hur says, me and my men will pray behind you, Ya Aba Abdullah. See, all of these things played a role in his tawfiq for Tawbah on the 10th of Muharram. Hur says to Imam al-Hussein, Ya ibn Rasulullah, I have orders to block you from entering Kufa, and you're not allowed to go to Medina. And Ya ibn Rasulullah, inni akrahu qitalak. I don't want to fight you. I respect you. I love you. But I'm asking you to go find somewhere else to go. You're not allowed to go to Kufa. Find somewhere else to set camp. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, he turns to his ashab. He says, is there anyone who can take us to a place that we can camp out? There was a Bedouin Arab who was in the deserts. He came to Imam al-Hussein. His name was al-Tarimmah. He says, Aba Abdullah, I can take you to a place where you can stop, you can unload your goods, and you can camp out. And it's close to a river. Al-Tarimmah, he takes the camel. He guides the camel of Sayyidah Zainab, and he very gently guides the camel. This Bedouin, as he's guiding the camel, he recites some beautiful lines of poetry. Ya naqati la tajza'i min zajri. يا ناقتي لا تجزعي من زجري وشمري قبل طلوع الفجر بخير ركبان وخير سفري آل رسول الله آل الفخر السادة البيض الوجوه الزهري يا مالك النفع معايا والضر أيد حسينا سيدي بالنصر. He guides the camel of Sayyidah Zainab. As he's guiding him, the narration says, suddenly the horse of Imam al-Hussein came to a halt. Imam al-Hussein dismounts his horse, thinking that the horse was tired and fatigued. He mounts another horse, the horse does not move. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, he reads the signal. He asks, Ashabi ma ismu hadhihi al-ard. Oh my companions, what is the name of this land? They tell him, Aba Abdullah, this is the land of al-Ghadriyat. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, he says, doesn't have another name. They say to him, Aba Abdullah, hadha shati'ul Furat. They call this land the bank of the Euphrates. The Imam says, no, there is another name. They say to him, Aba Abdullah, this is the land of Nainawa. Imam al-Hussein, he says, is there another name for this land? One of the Bedouin Arabs that was passing by said, yes, this land has another name. Aba Abdullah, this is the land of Karbala. Imam al-Hussein, when he hears the name of Karbala, he raises his eyes to the heavens and he raises his hands in dua. He says, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-karbi wal-bala. Oh Allah, I ask you, I seek refuge with you from tribulation and affliction. Abi Abdullah al-Hussein, he turns to his ashab, to his family, and he says to them that we have reached our destination. Ha huna mahattu rihalina. This is where we are to camp out. Ha huna tuqtalu rijaluna. This is where our men will be killed. Ha huna tuhraqu khiyamuna. This is where the Imam starts to point. He says, this is where they will set fire to the tents. This is where our young children will be slaughtered. And then the Imam alayhi salam says, this is where our women will be taken as captives. Sayyidah Zainab was escorted with honor to the land of Karbala. But shortly she will be taken from Karbala as a captive. La hawla wa la قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to accept the tears that we shed for the family of Rasulullah. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to increase our tawfiq. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to honor us with the intercession, the shafa'ah of Al Muhammad on the Day of Judgment. يوم لا ينفع مال ولا بنون إلا من أتى الله بقلب سليم. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين.
بأبي أنت وأمي يا حسين بأبي أنت وأمي يا حسين بأبي. All your voices. أمي يا حسين بأبي يا حسين بأبي يا حسين بأبي يا بأبي بأبي يا حسين بأبي أمي يا حسين. Before the world takes my soul, just one time please come to me. Before I fade to my death, in my dreams please visit me. Don't let me cry before I die. Don't let me cry before I die. Inshallah, you can help me with this, and I can hear all your voices, inshallah. Before the world takes my soul, just one time please come to me. Before I fade to my death, in my dreams please visit me. Before the world takes my soul, just one time please come to me. Before I fade to my death, in my dreams please visit me. So before I die, don't let me cry before the world takes my soul. Come to me before I fade to my death. In my dreams, please visit me. Just one time, please come to me before I fade to my death. In my dreams, please visit me. Don't let me cry. Don't let me cry. Don't let me cry. One more time. Before the world takes. Don't let me cry. I have aged yet so terribly without my father by my side. I was raised but in a shadow. I slept in all the tears I cried. My days were without end or hope. Only in nights did I abide, for it would reflect my sorrow. Even my tears, they had no guide. Even my tears, they... He who would come and take my hand and show the whole world to me. A father comforts his child, but the night comforted me. So tell me why before the world come to me before I fade to my death. Don't let me cry before I die. Don't let me cry die. I watched you leave our humble home, and by our door waiting I stood, but no one came back to raise me, and my heart never understood, and my heart never. Did you think I'd cause you trouble? Oh, Father, by God, I could limbs. I was raised as my mother taught. Every morning kiss you I would. Every morning kiss you. He would place your prayer mat by you. Every morning I'd come to you. In my nights you'd come to me. The last thing I saw was you. Love can't deny. Before the, raise your hands. Time, please come to me before I fade to my death. Say me, don't let me cry before I die. Don't let me cry, don't let me die. Every night when lonely I slept, in my dreams I would see your face. I'd ask you, oh Father, please come back. Every night when lonely I slept, in my dreams I would see your face. I'd ask you, Father, please come back. By your daughter's side is your place. By your daughter's once lived by me, pride and honor, now sorrow becomes my disgrace. When the world has its eyes on me, and with doubt my whole heart is laced, and with doubt my sorrow became my own friend. It replaced you, oh Father. Sorrow became my own. Placed you, oh Father, and so when I meet my end, it shall be my grave digger, and would I lie before the world, me before I fade to my death. Don't let me cry before I die. Don't let me. When the world had its grip on me, I did not know to who I turn. In every path this life took me, still for my Father I would yearn. Still for my Father I would. I gave men's tears a new meaning. From my own tears sorrow would learn. I was surrounded by my doubts. I slept on worry and concern. I slept hoping, oh Father, that soon you'd return to me. Like the rib of your mother, a broken heart sat in me. Patience is shy before. Please come to me before I fade to my. Visit me, don't let me cry before I die. Don't let me cry before I die. Don't let me cry. I die. As my death knocks upon my door, I tell it, wait for my Father, for to me still he must return. On him I will give up never, on him I will give up. Oh death, don't take me nor taunt me, do not tell me of Karbala, do not tell me of Karbala, for in my mind Hussein still walks, and he's searching for his daughter, in my mind Hussein's asking, where is the heart of my eyes? And so for years I'm waiting, delay for me my demise. Let me love rise before I before the please come to me before I fade. My dreams, please visit me before I die. Don't let me cry before I die. أحسنتم مأجورين. يا من رايد الخير اخدم واترك الغير. تعبك دين عد حسين، الخير كله بخدمة حسين، الخير كله بخدمة حسين. Inshallah, you can help me with the jawab, and your ajr is with Allah, inshallah. يا من رايد الخير اخدم واترك الغير. يا من رايد الخير اخدم واترك الغير. تعبك دين عد حسين، الخير كله بخدمة حسين، الخير كله بخدمة حسين. يا من رايد الخير اخدم واترك الغير. يا من رايد اخدم واترك الغير. تعبك دين عد حسين، الخير كله الخير كله. يا من رايد كل غير. يا من رايد الخير تعبك دين عد حسين، الخير كله بخدمة حسين، الخير كله. افطن وانتبه لي واستمع زين، يا الرايد نجاتك، يا الرايد يا الرايد نجاتك. يحضرك بالعزة عد فاطمة دين، توفك بمماتك إذا مالك علاقة ويا الحسين، إذا مالك علاقة ويا الحسين. شت فيدك صلاتك، شت فيدك صدقني عظيمة دمعة العين، تغفر سيئاتك معجزة الخدامة تظهر بالقيامة، معجزة الخدامة تظهر وقت الخوف انت تشوف، الخير كله بخدمة حسين، الخير كله حسين. يا من رايد الخير اخدم واترك الغير. يا من رايد شيدك كل غير. تعبك دين عد حسين، الخير كله الخير كله بخدمة حسين، الخير كله. من هالمنبر اسمع هالنصيحة، من هالمنبر اسمع هالنصيحة. خلي النوح طبعك عالمظلوم عندك، خلي صيحة والزهرة تسمعك والزهرة. إذا ما طايف حسين بضريحة، إذا ما طايف حسين بضريحة. يا حج لنفعك، يا حج لنفعك. الله يبارك بزاير ذبيحة، ويحسن لي رفعك، ويحسن لي رفعك. أجر الزار مرة حجوا ألف عمره أجر الزار مرة حجوا ألف عمره بكل تصريح مكة تصيح الخير كل الخير تحسين يا من رايد الخير اخدم واترك الغير يا من رايد الخير عيدها يا من رايد الخير اخدم واترك الغير تعبك دين عد حسين احسنتم كله بخدمة حسين الخير كل خير كل إلى خادم الحسين الشاعر كرار حسين الكربلائي صفا والمروة من شعائر الله صفا والمروة من شعائر الله بالآية المبينة بالآية المبينة مشي بناتهم تفسيرة تلقاه بدرة ثمينة مشى يعتني وصاخ حسينه مشى يعتني وصاخ حسينه عيده مشى وزور بأربعينه وزور إن ما يعتقد حسين مولاه بإشكال دينه بإشكال دينه جبريل بعظمته خادم يمه شفته جبريل بعظمته هل مرسول هو شنو يقول الخير كله تحسين الخير يا من رايد الخير يا من رايد الخير تعبك دين حسين الخير كله بخدمة حسين الخير ثواب اللي تصدق ذنبه ينزل ثواب اللي تصدق ذنبه ينزل جهنم منه تبره إذا شنو ثواب اللي ينفق المال في خدمة العترة في خدمة العترة إذا تنطيل أبو السجاد مثقال إذا تنطيل أبو السجاد مثقال يرد الصاع 10 يرد غني الحسين غني الحسين هذا واقع الحال واحنا اليم فقره واحنا اليم فقره ابو السجاد خالد ما محتاج واحد ابو السجاد خالد ما كل الكون يعرف كون الخير الخير يا من الخير كله بخدمة حسين الخير كله بخدمة حسين الخير كله بخدمة حسين دمعته وبيوم القيامة سعيه مشكور مخلص في خدمته مخلص واللي يلبس سواد بشهر عاشور تظل بيضة صفحته تظل بيضة تجي الزهرة الزكية بضلع مكسور تقلب ذمتي انت بخدامتهم تمسك جهنم ما تمسك هم تمسك جهنم ما بالدارين افهم زين الخير زين الخير كل يا من رايد يا من رايد الخير
اخدم واترك الغير تعبك دين عد حسين الخير كله بخدمة حسين
الخير كله بخدمة حسين الخير كله بخدمة حسين الخير
كله بخدمة حسين كله بخدمة حسين
لا يمخيلوا مكسب الدموع لا يمخيلوا مكسب الدموع ابكي ولا تسمعه ابكي ولا الما عنده حبيب ونحره مقطوع لمن يجري دمعه راس حسين فوق الرمح مرفوع راس الرمح مرفوع قطعه حتى صبعه وكف صبعه داست فوق خيل وهشمة ضلوع زينب يمه تنعى وزينب يمه وزينب يمه زينب البكي واجب علي على الراحة سبية البكي واجب علي على الراحة سبية ينحب دوم على المظلوم الخير كله يا من رايد
اخدم واترك الغير يا من رايد الخير اخدم واترك الغير تعبك دين عد حسين الخير كله بخدمة
حسين الخير كله الخير كله وبيوم القيامة سعيه مشكور وبيوم القيامة سعيه مشكور مخلص في خدمته مخلص فيه واليلبس سواد بشهر عاشور تظل بيضة صفحته تظل بيضة صفحته تظل بيضة صفحته تجي الزهرة الزكية بضلع مكسور تقلب ذمتي انت بخدامتهم تمسك جهنم ما تمسك جهنم ما تمسك بالدارين افهم زين الخير زين الخير يا من يا من رايد
اخدم واترك الغير
تعبك دين عد حسين حسين الخير كله بخدمة حسين الخير كله بخدمة حسين الخير كله بخدمة حسين نسألك اللهم وندعوك باسمك العظيم الأعظم الأعز الأجل الأكرم يا الله. 10 times in your loudest voices. Ya Allah, 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 Ya Allah. ولأرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات نهدي ثواب سورة الفاتحة تسبق الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد.